a war that has been going on for over 10 years now. The Russia-Ukraine war has been an ever constant on the horizon. In 2022, February, I think, Russia launched a massive invasion on Ukraine, and since then, all hell broke loose. There was a massive refugee crisis, a geopolitical, really volatile situation turned up. But now there has been a key phone call between the new US president, President Trump, and Vladimir Putin. And there is a big chance that there may be an end to the war. So Trump has said he's committed to peace talks with Putin. And we're here today to discuss if this can actually materialize into the end of the war. So I have with me Tridivesh Singh Maini. He is an analyst, a geopolitical analyst who has kept a keen eye on the war for several years now. And sir, so first of all, does this seem something that is materialistically possible?
See, well, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I think obviously the fact that we need to bear in mind a few things. The first is that Trump had a 90-minute call.
Yeah.
And that's a long conversation by any standards, right? Now, in that, obviously, one is the aspect about the conflict. What that this call has done is this has also given, because for very long in the last 2-3 years, the earlier administration, the Biden administration, along with Western European nations, had a very different sort of approach towards Putin, and he had become somewhat of a barrier in the Western context. Now this has given him a new lease of life in that sense. That's the first starting point. That's very important. From the American point of view, you see tensions with China are also rising because of tariff war and all that. Now they needed to. There's always this the triangle of US, Russia, and China is very complex. US cannot afford to have strains with China as it is, and on top of that, this war given the fact that this conflict is going on, there are several other issues. So obviously, Trump also wanted to send out a message that he's not. Obviously that he's in control of things. That's so. Beyond the bilateral, these are the important issues. Now let's come specifically to if I were to look at this in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The conditionalities imposed by both are problematic. That's a peace agreement which Putin has proposed as a sort of important component of negotiation, and even what Ukraine wants. Now, the other issue is also about the US has also categorically sort of dismissed, the Ukrainian membership of NATO. That is one more. And obviously Ukraine will not be happy.
So that's the interesting point. Actually, they've dismissed that, and they've also said that it is impossible to go back to the situation which was in 2014.
They wanted to go back to the pre-2014 thing. But nevertheless, whenever you begin a negotiation, obviously there are sticking points, and this is not unusual in that sense. So it's a good start in that sense. Now I think there's a Munich Security Conference also, and on the sidelines of that also, the US delegation will be meeting the Ukrainian president, right? So all that will happen. It's going to be very complex. Certainly, and third countries are going to play a very important role. So in fact, Trump said that his meeting will be, he'll be meeting Putin for the first time in Saudi Arabia. The first meeting will be in Saudi Arabia, and then after that, everyone else. Now, Saudi Arabia also in the last 2-3 years has been playing this balancing role between the West and Russia. From that context also, it's interesting. China has also said that they will host a summit. Now, I think the fact that obviously this process has started, this needs to be welcomed. But there are going to be, there is going to be a hard bargain. And I think, let's see to what extent does Trump's personal rapport with Putin, to what extent does that help? And but there has to also be, it should not be too skewed or tilted towards one side. Achieving that will be tough.
Exactly.
But that needs to be ensured, and only then can it be something meaningful.
Definitely. So next point what I was coming on is Saudi Arabia, as you interestingly pointed out. Saudi Arabia has an ambition of being sort of a buffer and being the person who's helping the West and the East come close. So in that context, is this actually a peace talk that will come out with a positive outcome for Ukraine, or is it more about Saudi Arabia being at the center of it?
So I mean, obviously, people would hope both.
Yeah.
But Saudi Arabia, certainly, you're absolutely right that it's like many other countries, it's been balancing with the tilt. Obviously,
Yeah,
in spite of
towards the
everything, the
US.
tilt is towards the US. There is no doubt
Definitely.
about that, right? There is also this issue now, which one is what has happened. I think the meeting in Saudi Arabia has also been proposed so that the situation in the Middle East can be discussed. Of course, Trump's proposal, which was
Yeah.
outlandish, I would say, regarding Gaza.
Yeah.
That has not gone down very well with the Saudis.
Yeah,
Also, they
yeah,
also have their own.
yeah.
So I think that issue will also be discussed. So probably this meeting will be used for discussing other important global issues,
Yeah.
diplomatic issues. But certainly in the Russia-Ukraine and it's the most. There was no other. This was the best bet as such for the US. In terms of the balancing act.
Yeah.
But I think now the important issue is that there cannot be this if it's going to be driven by transactionalism, because already Trump
Yeah.
has spoken about natural
I
resources.
think we can be sure about it.
Yeah,
it will be
that
different.
that will be problematic.
Yeah.
This is a very complex issue, and it needs.
And where will Ukraine end up in that case?
Exactly, and then there is also so the Ukraine also has its own sort of support.
Yeah.
One, I think, for a deal to really work out, irrespective of whatever else, Trump has to his domestic constituency in the US, which includes not just Democrats but even Republicans. They would not like a deal which is too skewed in favor of one side, because obviously the US has its own history of relations with Russia, its overall geopolitical situation. So it can't. I mean, this is not. They'll have to ensure that, and this is one area, or this is one situation certainly where everywhere else a little bit of transactionalism and some proposals which may seem a bit of a stretch, you can get away with. This requires a lot of seriousness, and it will need, I think, the Trump's senior diplomats and all, they will need to play a very important role, and
definitely.
hopefully that is what will be because from the political leader, you can expect some rhetoric, you can expect everything else, but when you look at the deals, when you go to the details, the fine print, it's much more complex.
Much more complex. Exactly. And so with the complex fine print, trying to simplify it for the viewers. So one question is, what are the major roadblocks or challenges do you see in such a deal materializing with something positive out for Ukraine? So there are several things I can understand in terms of the border dimension, and then in fact, mining resources and all is a big issue, and then the refugee crisis in itself, who takes them. So there are multiple aspects, and that could be roadblocks or hurdles. So what do you think would be the biggest factors that would play a role when US and Russia basically have a talk?
When you're talking about the Ukrainian point of view.
No, from during the peace deal.
I think
if
both
the talk or with US and Russia, what would be the talking points?
Now, since it's between Russia and Ukraine, let's say the US also pressurizes Ukraine to give in to Russia. That will really not solve the problem.
Exactly.
The real issues which we flagged earlier, that one side wants to go to a pre-2014 sort of arrangement. Putin, his peace agreement of May 2024, that whatever we've captured will remain with us. Now these are major sticking. They're far more complex than they seem. And even the membership of, if you put a condition, if you put a clause that this can happen after 5 years or 10 years or whatever, but that you are free to join NATO, but not at this point of time. That sort of thing can still work. But if there's a blanket thing that you can't join NATO, that Ukraine will not accept.
So actually, that's something that the US is pushing. And so before we wrap this up, one final question. So we obviously know that Russia would not get away without having a win-win situation for itself. And the US, of course, always is winning in all these situations. But what about Ukraine? Will Ukraine survive these peace talks in itself from the longer point of view also, longer perspective? Because this is not something that Ukraine's identity at this moment, but even moving forward, it will be severely curtailed. And the other thing is US ready to dump the Ukraine problem on Europe and leave?
No. I don't think that was all campaign rhetoric. There'll be conditionalities. Now, having seen the last month, a lot of it is rhetoric. Then what happens is, so Trump basically throws the bait, like he talks about tariffs. He's going to then those conditionalities. Some conditionalities can be accepted, some cannot. Similarly, in this, he will keep on upping the ante. The issues, as I said, those are the main issues. Those three issues which will remain. Pre 2014, post 2024 and whatever else, those will remain. But I think with Russia also, this there is a bit of for instance, let's say one thing which could incentivize the Russians is relaxation of certain sanctions. That's very
Yeah,
important,
that.
and that is something the whole world will actually be looking
Actually, and I think that is something that is expected out there. But
Yeah.
what about Ukraine? Will Ukraine be able to survive? What do you think personally? Of course.
at. Very tough, but as I said, there are lobbies which firmly, I mean, within the US also, there are, while at this point of time, there's that school of thought which says that the US should be less interventionist and Ukraine should not join NATO and all is dominant as a result of the
Yeah.
current dispensation. But the other people with another viewpoint also, I mean, they have a strong say in certain things. And also, a lot depends upon the team.
Yeah.
Because, see, even last time there were differences.
Yeah.
Trump and many of his advisors were at variance. Now that will play out over the next few months. See, maybe the US senior officials in the security establishment and all, they may not be totally on the same page, and they may not view things in such a black and white manner as obviously
course,
Trump, right?
of course.
So that is something which needs to be seen. And I think for Russia, the important part is what, because that will be a major relief.
Yeah.
The sanctions part.
Sanctions and NATO.
Yeah.
That's the only
Yes.
two things I
Exactly,
think.
exactly.
Perfect. So that was our little analysis. Peace talks will happen in a while, and we will see how it pans out. And we are all waiting to see how it pans out for Ukraine specifically. This is DNA. You are watching Chitresh with Ridevesh Singh Mani. We'll be back with more such analysis.